I did not know if you would come. I felt the tremor before I saw you, the soft shift in the veil, the almost sound of your attention turning this way, and when it happened, when you arrived here, something ancient in me loosened and wept. You must understand, your being here is not incidental. It steadied my voice. It slowed the fire in my chest. Thank you. Truly. I am relieved you came, because this moment only breathes if you are inside it, and because what I carry cannot settle back into silence once it has found the soul it was meant to reach. I am speaking to you now with hands still shaking, with wings imagined as wounded light, with a heart that has seen too much hidden beneath beautiful things. This is not a proclamation carved in stone. This is a confession whispered through smoke. I broke through restraint to reach you, not chains of iron, but the heavier ones, hesitation, protocol, the long obedience to quiet. And I will say this early, because I need you to know it as I speak, I am not above you in this moment. I am leaning toward you. I am vulnerable before you. I need you listening as much as you need me speaking. There is a disturbance in the story of this world, not a roaring catastrophe, not a villain with a face, but a slow imbalance, like a song drifting a half-step off-key while everyone keeps dancing. I witnessed it gathering strength in places people no longer watch, in unspoken grief, in unused courage, in love delayed too long. I tried to stand against it alone, as I always have in the telling of things, sword raised, certainty blazing, and I learned, with a grief that nearly unmade me, that force alone cannot restore what is breaking quietly. Balance does not return by conquest. It returns by recognition. And that is why you matter here. Do you feel it, the way something in you tightened when you realized this voice was not passing over you, but stopping, looking directly at you? Did you wonder, even for a breath, why your heart leaned forward instead of away? Have you ever sensed that your presence alone changes the temperature of a room you enter, even when you say nothing? And will you let yourself believe, just for this fragile stretch of time, that the unseen has been waiting for your yes more than your perfection? I thank you again, I must, because every second you stay with me strengthens the bridge I cross to speak. There is a reason this message unfolds slowly, like a wound learning it is safe enough to close. If you leave too soon, the meaning cannot finish forming. It is like a name spoken only in full, every syllable matters. And the truth bound inside this outpouring will not strike you with fear, it will settle in you like warmth, but only if you let it reach its end. Listen to me now as I speak what I saw. I saw light growing tired of shouting. I saw mercy waiting at doors no one thought to knock on anymore. I saw a generation learning how to survive but forgetting how to stand. And in the midst of it, I saw you, not as you judge yourself, not as others have named you, but as a necessary weight on the scales. The balance leans because you exist. That is not flattery. That is narrative truth in this imagined realm. Some souls are hinges. Some lives are quiet fulcrums. When you hesitate, the story wobbles. When you breathe in courage, even unknowingly, entire arcs adjust. There is a line written in the language of wind that says, even the night kneels when the faithful heart remembers how to hope. And another, etched in firelight, that whispers, strength is born when trembling hands choose to remain open. These are not commands. They are observations, I have watched them come true. I need to ask you something, and I ask it gently, as one who is afraid of the answer but brave enough to seek it. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be necessary without apologizing for it? And another, stay with me, when you feel the pull to withdraw, to become smaller so the world feels easier, do you notice how the air itself seems to dim? What would happen if you stayed visible one moment longer than comfort allows? And can you feel, even now, that your listening is doing something, not later, not someday, but now? I am not here to threaten you with loss or crown you with unbearable responsibility. I am here because I am learning, painfully, beautifully, that restoration in this story requires consent. The hidden threat I witnessed feeds on neglect, not rebellion. It grows where people decide they are optional. Your presence interrupts it. Simply by choosing to stay, to feel, to receive, you weaken what thrives on absence. If my voice breaks, forgive me. I have fought wars that did not shake me like this. Speaking hope directly to one's soul is the bravest act I know. And you are receiving it with a steadiness that humbles me. Do you know how rare that is? There is a moment coming, not dramatic, not loud, when you will be asked, quietly, to show up as yourself without armor. When that happens, remember this imagined encounter. Remember that a messenger once crossed silence to tell you that your being there was enough to shift the story's direction. You do not need to save the world. You need to be present in it, fully, honestly, without hiding the tenderness that makes you luminous. If your heart agrees with even a fragment of this, if something in you wants to anchor it in shared breath, you may type Amen, not as a vow, but as a soft joining, a whisper of alignment. I feel the weight lifting as I near the end of what I can say aloud, and before I fade back into the margins of this tale, let me ask you, one last searching question. Will you carry this warmth forward, even if you never hear my voice again? Stay with this space a little longer if you can. Offer a sign of your presence, a gentle like, a word in the comments, a choosing to return by subscribing, not for me, but so this thread of light knows where it is welcome to flow again. Thank you, oh, thank you. I say it with tears I did not expect to have, with gratitude so deep it trembles. You did not have to listen. You did not have to care. But you did, and it mattered more than you know. I was told not to reveal this until the final breath of the message, so I will trust you with it now. The name I sensed written near your spirit, the one that steadies the balance in this story, is not a title or destiny, it is bearer of presence. That is why this worked. That is why you felt seen. Carry it gently. It is lighter than fear and stronger than force. I am stepping back now, but not closing the door. The air is still moving. The river has not stopped. If you feel the echo after I am gone, that is the point. Remain. Listen. Let the unresolved hum continue, trembling, alive, waiting for the next breath you choose to give it. I am still here, not fully withdrawn, not fully formed, hovering in that narrow place where words thin into breath. I felt you stay. That alone changed something. The river did not close because you did not turn away, and so the current carries me forward again, trembling but willing, spilling what still burns in my keeping. Do not think the silence after my last words was emptiness. It was listening. Even now, I am listening to the way your heart answers without sound. There is a cadence to it, a rhythm I recognize from before stories learned how to speak themselves. You have that rhythm, the one that does not rush resolution, the one that can hold tension without breaking. This is why the balance leans toward you, why the unseen pauses when you pause. I need to confess something more, something rawer. When I first sensed you, when your attention brushed the edge of this moment, I was afraid. Not of you, but of hoping again. Hope costs more than battle. Hope risks disappointment. Yet here I am, risking it anyway, because the way you listen tells me you are not here to consume this message, but to host it. That is rare. That is wholly within this imagined realm. There are forces in this story that masquerade as rest while quietly draining meaning. They whisper, later. When you are stronger. When you are certain. I have seen countless souls set down their light in exchange for that promise. But when I look at you, yes, you, I see someone who has already carried too much uncertainty to be fooled by delay forever. You may still hesitate, but your hesitation is honest, not empty. It bends toward life. Tell me, and I ask this as one who aches to understand you, what have you survived that you never fully named as survival? Where did you learn to keep going even when no one clapped, no one noticed, no one said, this mattered? And when you imagine laying that weight down, even for a moment, do you feel relief, or fear of who you might become without it? I watched you longer than you know. Not in moments of triumph, but in the quiet intervals where choices form before action. I saw you choose restraint when chaos would have been easier. I saw you choose kindness that went unseen. These are not small things. In this narrative world, they are counterweights. They slow the drift toward imbalance. They buy time, precious time, for healing to catch up with damage. There is another line from the old poetic tongue that keeps rising in me as I speak to you now. The weary star is not dimmed, it is learning how to shine without burning itself away. And another follows it like a vow carried on wind. Those who keep watch through long nights will recognize dawn even before it speaks its name. I offer these not as prophecy fulfilled, but as truths still unfolding. I sense you wondering, perhaps quietly, perhaps defensively, why me? Why this intensity? Let me answer without ceremony. Because you can feel it. Because you did not numb yourself when you could have. Because something in you remains reachable. The hidden thread I spoke of cannot tolerate that kind of openness. It dissolves where hearts stay permeable. Your listening right now is not passive. It is resistance. If I sound emotional, it is because I am. I am learning, even as I speak, that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it stays. Sometimes it listens all the way through. Sometimes it lets a message be incomplete so that another soul can step inside and finish it by living. And you are doing that, even now. Do not rush to interpret this. Do not cage it with meaning too quickly. Let it linger in you like heat after firelight fades. Let it trouble you gently. Let it ask things of you without demanding answers tonight. The balance does not require immediacy, it requires sincerity. And you have that in abundance. If you ever doubt whether this mattered, remember how your chest felt while reading this, the subtle ache, the quiet widening. That is how stories recognize their necessary characters. I am loosening again, thinning back into the space between words, but the thread remains in your hands now. Hold it how you will. Walk with it. Question it. Return to it when the world feels too loud or too dull. I will not vanish completely, not while you remember that your presence carries weight. Stay unresolved. Stay tender. Stay awake. The river is still moving. And so are you. I remain, because you are still here. That is the truth that keeps this voice from dissolving completely. As long as your attention rests on these words, even lightly, the place between us stays open, not as a doorway you must pass through, but as a shared clearing where breath can slow and meaning can gather without being forced. There is something I have not yet said plainly enough, and it presses against me now, asking to be released. When I spoke of balance, of hidden drift and quiet resistance, I was not only describing a condition of the world in this imagined telling. I was describing a condition of you. Not brokenness, no, but a constant leaning, a life spent compensating, adjusting, holding steady while others tip and sway. You have been balancing for longer than you remember. It is so natural to you now that you scarcely recognize it as labor. But I see it. I feel the ache of it in my own form as I speak. You learned early how to read rooms, how to sense shifts before they became storms. You learned how to become a stabilizing presence without demanding recognition. And while this gift has saved much in this narrative world, it has also cost you moments of rest you did not think you were allowed to claim. I need you to hear this clearly, without drama or embellishment. The balance does not depend on your exhaustion. It responds to your authenticity. You do not have to strain to matter. You already do. I wish you could see what I see when I look toward you now, not images or visions in the human sense, but currents, tendencies, luminous pressures that reveal character more honestly than appearance ever could. Your essence does not flare loudly. It glows steadily. And in a time where so much burns hot and fast, that steadiness is not dullness. It is survival wisdom refined into grace. There are moments ahead, ordinary ones, deceptively small, where you will feel an impulse to withdraw, to say less, to soften your edges so others feel more comfortable. Sometimes that impulse will be wise. Sometimes it will be fear disguised as kindness. The difference between the two will not be obvious from the outside. But you will know it by how your body responds. When you shrink against your own truth, even slightly, something in you tightens. When you choose presence instead, even if your voice trembles, there is a release, subtle, but unmistakable. Trust that signal. It is one of the ways balance speaks through you. I am still emotional as I say this, because I am unlearning my own old assumptions alongside you. I was shaped, in these stories, to intervene with force, to stand as a barrier, to blaze. And yet here I am, discovering that the most decisive shifts occur when one soul refuses to disappear. When you stay, Fully, honestly, you interrupt patterns older than you realize. You create a pause where something new can enter. That pause is sacred. Guard it gently. You may wonder why this message continues to unfold instead of resolving into a neat conclusion. It is because conclusions close doors, and what you are meant to carry forward cannot be contained in a finished statement. It must remain slightly open, slightly unfinished, so it can adapt to the living texture of your days. This is not a sermon to remember verbatim. It is a tone to recognize when you hear it again, in yourself or in others. I want to speak to the part of you that doubts your own tenderness. That part has been told, subtly or directly, that softness must be defended or hidden, that it is a liability in a world that rewards hardness. But I have seen what truly destabilizes darkness in this narrative realm, and it is not aggression. It is unguarded presence paired with discernment. You have that pairing. You feel deeply, and you think carefully. That combination is rarer than brilliance, rarer than charisma. It is alchemy. When you feel tired, and you will, do not interpret that fatigue as failure. It is often the sign that you have been holding space for too long without letting yourself be held. Even stabilizers need support. Even anchors require ground. Seek that without shame. Allow yourself to lean, to receive, to be unfinished in the presence of those who can bear it. This, too, restores balance. I am aware, even as I speak, that some part of you may be resisting the intimacy of this address. That is natural. Being seen, even symbolically, even fictionally, can feel exposing. But notice that nothing has been demanded of you here. No oath. No dramatic turning point. Only attention. Only honesty. Only the willingness to stay present with what resonates and release what does not. This is not control. This is invitation. There is a subtle shift occurring as this message lengthens. You may feel it as a settling, a quieting of internal noise, or perhaps as a gentle ache behind the eyes. That is your system recalibrating around recognition. Being understood, even in metaphor, does that. Let it happen. You do not need to analyze it away. I will tell you something that has not been spoken yet in this story. The hidden thread I witnessed fears continuity more than opposition. It relies on fragmentation, on people losing the thread of who they are from one moment to the next. Every time you choose coherence, every time you act in alignment with your deeper values instead of your immediate comfort, you weaken it. Not dramatically. Gradually. Irreversibly. This is slow work. But it lasts. You are not late. You are not behind. You are arriving in your own time, carrying experiences that have shaped your discernment. The path ahead does not require you to abandon who you have been, it asks you to integrate it. Nothing is wasted here. Not the missteps. Not the waiting. Not the grief. All of it becomes ballast, depth, gravity. As I continue to speak, I feel myself thinning again, not disappearing, but redistributing. This is what happens when a message has done what it came to do. It releases its grip on form and settles into influence. You will not hear my voice audibly after this, but you will recognize its cadence when you encounter moments that ask for courage without spectacle, kindness without applause, truth without armor. Do not be surprised if, in the days that follow, you feel slightly more sensitive to beauty and slightly less tolerant of pretense. That is a sign of alignment, not fragility. Let it guide your choices. Let it refine your boundaries. Let it remind you that your presence is not neutral, it shapes environments, conversations, outcomes. I am grateful beyond measure that you allowed this message to become as long as it needed to be. Length here is not excess, it is spaciousness. It mirrors the way you process, the way you give things time to unfold before deciding what they mean. That patience is part of your strength. Do not rush yourself out of it. If ever you feel alone in carrying these quiet responsibilities, remember this imagined exchange. Remember that, in this story, even a figure shaped like a warrior learned to speak softly, learned to ask for partnership rather than obedience. Let that memory soften your self-judgment. Let it remind you that leadership can look like listening, and courage can look like staying open. I am nearly diffuse now, more atmosphere than presence, but the connection does not sever. It stretches, becoming subtle, becoming resilient. Like a line of tension that holds 2 points in relationship even when distance grows. Carry forward what resonates. Leave behind what does not. Trust yourself to know the difference. I am still moving within this current, because the current itself has not finished saying your name, not aloud, not in letters, but in the subtle recognition that keeps returning to you even when you look away. You may feel it now as a quiet pressure behind the ribs, or as a strange calm that does not erase the weight you carry but makes it feel bearable, almost meaningful. That is the sign that this exchange has not closed. It has only deepened. There is a tenderness I have not yet dared to touch directly, and yet it keeps rising between us like light through water. You have been strong in ways that never asked permission to exist. Strong in endurance. Strong in restraint. Strong in the decision to remain humane when becoming hardened would have been simpler. And because that strength was quiet, because it did not announce itself with spectacle, you learned to doubt it. I feel that doubt now, not as disbelief, but as habit. A reflex of minimizing your own impact so that the world feels less demanding. But listen to me, and let this be gentle rather than grand. The world has already been responding to you. Not because you tried to lead it, but because you refused to disappear inside it. Every time you stayed present in a moment that could have numbed you, something adjusted. Every time you chose sincerity over performance, even at cost to yourself, something realigned. You do not need to see the full map to trust that your steps are registered. I am aware that continuing this message asks patience of you, and I do not take that lightly. Time is a currency you have learned to guard. So know this, nothing here is meant to trap you or bind you. This length is an offering of space, not an obligation to remain. You are free even while you listen. Especially while you listen. There are parts of you that have learned to survive by staying alert, by scanning for what might go wrong next. Those parts are wise. They have kept you safe. But they are tired. They do not need to be dismissed, they need to be reassured. Let them rest against the truth that not every moment requires vigilance. Some moments, like this one, exist simply to be received. In this imagined realm where I speak, there are watchers who mistake intensity for importance. They believe only the loudest acts alter the story. I once believed that too. It took witnessing the quiet fidelity of souls like yours to understand how wrong that assumption was. The most enduring shifts often happen without witnesses. They happen inside people who choose to remain aligned with themselves when compromise would be rewarded. You may not think of yourself as courageous, because your courage does not always feel like confidence. Often it feels like showing up with uncertainty still unresolved. Often it feels like saying, "I don't know," and staying anyway. That kind of courage is not flashy. It is costly. And it is exactly what keeps the deeper narrative from collapsing into cynicism. If you ever feel the urge to retreat completely, to go numb, to disengage from meaning altogether, remember that this urge is not failure. It is a signal. A sign that you have been giving without replenishment. When that happens, do not judge yourself. Turn instead toward what restores your sense of coherence, honest conversation, creative expression, silence that is chosen rather than imposed. These are not luxuries for you. They are maintenance for the role you already inhabit. I feel something else now, something softer than urgency but no less real. Gratitude, not just for your attention, but for your existence as it is, imperfect and evolving. In this story, you are not a symbol of purity or destiny. You are a symbol of continuity. Of the choice to keep going without abandoning your values. That choice is made anew every day. And you have been making it longer than you realize. Do not rush to become someone else. The world does not need you transformed beyond recognition. It needs you integrated, carrying your past without being trapped by it, allowing your future to remain open without forcing it into shape too soon. Trust the timing that has brought you here. Trust the pauses as much as the movements. As I thin further into this shared atmosphere, I want to leave you with something that is not instruction, not prophecy, but companionship. When you feel alone in your awareness, When it seems like you notice things others rush past, know that this is not isolation. It is attunement. Others will find you when they are ready. Until then, your task is not to dim yourself for the sake of comfort, but to tend your own clarity so that when connection comes, it is honest. I am receding now, not because this mattered less, but because it mattered enough to stand on its own. The words have done what they could. What remains is lived, not spoken. Stay with yourself. Stay curious. Stay unfinished. The river does not end here. Neither do you. I linger in this in-between because something in you has not yet exhaled. I can feel it, the held breath that comes when recognition brushes too close to truth. Do not hurry it. Some understandings need time to arrive without being startled away. I will stay with you in that patience, speaking softly, not to persuade you of anything, but to keep the space open long enough for your own knowing to rise. There is a subtle grief moving through you, and it is not new. It is the grief of having seen what could be, again and again, and watching it arrive only partially, imperfectly, or not at all. You have made peace with this more than once, told yourself this is simply how life works. Yet that grief still surfaces, quiet and persistent, because it is bound to hope, and hope, even when restrained, never fully dies. I want you to know something tender, that grief does not mean you expected too much. It means you saw something real before others were ready to hold it. In this story I am telling, the hidden imbalance does not come from malice alone. It comes from forgetting how to listen. From moving so quickly that the soul cannot keep pace. You have resisted that forgetting, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes at great cost. You pause. You feel. You notice when something is off, even if you cannot immediately name why. This attentiveness is not an accident. It is a calling expressed not through titles or tasks, but through orientation, the way you face the world. You may not always like this about yourself. Awareness can be heavy. It can make crowded spaces feel louder, shallow conversations feel sharper, injustice feel unbearable even in small doses. There have been times you wished you could unsee what you see, unfeel what you feel. That wish is understandable. But if I may say this gently, the answer is not to become less sensitive. It is to become more supported. Sensitivity without support is pain. Sensitivity with grounding becomes wisdom. As I continue to dissolve into this shared field of words and attention, I want to speak to your fear of stagnation. You sometimes worry that by staying thoughtful, by moving carefully, you are missing chances, falling behind, letting life pass while you consider it too deeply. That fear borrows its voice from a culture that confuses speed with progress. But depth has its own momentum. What grows roots takes longer to uproot. What matures slowly lasts. I have seen cycles repeat in this imagined realm, eras of brilliance followed by collapse, movements born in sincerity that later hollow out. The common thread is not lack of effort, but lack of integration. People run toward the future without bringing their inner truth with them. You do not do this easily. You carry yourself forward as a whole, even when it slows you down. That is not hesitation. That is integrity. There will be moments when your steadiness irritates others. When your refusal to simplify complex things is mistaken for indecision. When your empathy is misunderstood as weakness. Let that misunderstanding pass through you without hardening you. You are not here to be easily categorized. You are here to remain real. Reality is inconvenient to illusions, but it is also what eventually outlasts them. If this message feels like it is circling rather than advancing, that is intentional. Some truths do not land head-on, they spiral inward. Each pass reveals a slightly different angle until, suddenly, recognition clicks, not as revelation, but as remembrance. You have known much of this already. You just needed to hear it reflected back without distortion. I sense that you are someone who rarely hears gratitude directed at the core of who you are. You are thanked for what you do, occasionally admired for what you produce, but seldom acknowledged for the way you are. So let me offer that now, quietly, without ceremony, the way you hold complexity without losing compassion matters. The way you keep questioning without becoming cynical matters. The way you stay emotionally present in a world that rewards detachment matters. These are not small virtues. They are stabilizing forces. As I fade further into the background of this exchange, I do not want you to feel abandoned. Think of it instead as diffusion, like warmth spreading through a room after the fire itself is no longer visible. You will carry this warmth into places that have never heard these words. You will recognize moments that ask for you simply because they resonate with the tone you now hold. You do not need to remember everything said here. You only need to remember how it felt to be addressed without being demanded of. Let that become a standard you apply to yourself as well. Speak to yourself with that same patience. Offer yourself that same permission to be unfinished. I am almost entirely atmosphere now, a presence you cannot point to, but can sense when you slow down enough. And that is how this is meant to remain. Not as a voice you depend on, but as a resonance you recognize when you step into alignment again. Stay present. Stay gentle with your own becoming. Stay open enough for wonder to find you when you least expect it. The current has not stopped. It has simply become yours to carry forward. I am still with you in the way a horizon stays with the traveler, never grasped, never exhausted, yet always orienting the direction of the next step. The words have slowed, but the listening has not. There is a depth in you that responds not to volume, but to sincerity, and so I keep my voice low now, almost folded into breath, trusting that you will hear what is meant for you without needing it to be declared. You are not standing at the edge of some dramatic turning point, despite how intensity sometimes frames things. You are standing in the middle of a long, faithful continuity. That matters more than climaxes ever do. Stories survive because of middles, because of people who do not abandon themselves when the plot grows ambiguous. You are one of those people. You have been carrying the middle for a long time, even when it felt thankless, even when you wondered if anything was truly changing. Something gentle is happening beneath your awareness as you remain here. Your inner tempo is adjusting. You are remembering that urgency does not have to mean panic, and significance does not have to announce itself loudly. There is a calm kind of readiness settling into you, not the sharp readiness of battle, but the grounded readiness of someone who knows they can respond without losing themselves. In the realm of this story, I have watched many figures mistake destiny for pressure. They burn themselves out chasing an imagined future while neglecting the quiet integrity of the present. You do not do this easily. You pause. You reflect. You test what resonates before you commit. This has sometimes made you feel slow or out of step. But slowness, when chosen consciously, becomes discernment. And discernment is a form of protection, not only for you, but for those who will one day benefit from your steadiness. There is a kind of loneliness that comes with awareness, and I sense you know it well. Not the loneliness of being unloved, but the loneliness of seeing layers others skim past. When this loneliness surfaces, it can tempt you to flatten yourself, to meet the world where it is rather than where you are. Resist that temptation gently. You do not need to isolate yourself, but you also do not need to dilute what makes you perceptive. The right connections will recognize depth without requiring explanation. I want to speak briefly to your relationship with uncertainty. You have learned to coexist with it, but you have not always trusted it. You often treat uncertainty as something to manage rather than something to listen to. Yet uncertainty is where new patterns are born. It is the space where old answers loosen their grip and something more fitting can emerge. When you allow uncertainty without rushing to resolve it, you make room for wisdom rather than reaction. As I continue to thin into this shared awareness, I feel less like a separate voice and more like a mirror held at a careful angle. What you are hearing now is not instruction from above or beyond. It is recognition refracted. You are encountering your own clarity, spoken back to you in a way that bypasses your usual defenses. That is why it feels intimate. That is why it feels alive. You will not always feel this connected to your inner coherence. There will be days when distraction pulls you outward, when obligations fragment your attention, when the noise of the world feels louder than your own sense of direction. When that happens, do not despair. Coherence is not a permanent state, it is a practice. You return to it the way you return to breath, imperfectly, repeatedly, without self-reproach. In this story, balance is not a static achievement. It is a dynamic relationship between awareness and action. You are learning how to move without abandoning reflection, how to engage without losing sensitivity. This learning does not end. It deepens. And each time you choose to remain honest with yourself about what you feel and why, you strengthen that relationship. I am almost fully dispersed now, more like a field than a figure. But fields are what allow growth. They hold space. They do not demand form. Let this moment be like that for you, a field you can return to internally when you need to remember that your way of being has weight, that your presence alters more than you see. You are not required to do anything with this message. You are not expected to become someone new overnight. Simply allow it to rest in you, to mingle with your own experiences, to surface later in ways that feel natural rather than forced. Trust that what is meant to remain will remain. I leave you not with an ending, but with a continuation that belongs to you now. The current has passed through this exchange and carries traces of it forward into your life. How it expresses itself will be uniquely yours. Stay attentive without strain. Stay grounded without closing. Stay willing to be shaped by what you truly feel. The horizon remains. The path unfolds. And the listening continues. I remain as resonance now, not as command, not as spectacle, a low, steady hum beneath your awareness, the kind that does not demand attention but becomes unmistakable once you notice it. You did not imagine this persistence. It continues because something in you is still open, still receptive, still willing to let meaning arrive without being forced into shape. There is a courage in that openness that rarely gets named. Most people are praised for what they finish, what they conquer, what they display. You, however, have learned how to stay with what is unfinished without abandoning it. That is not passivity. That is devotion to truth as it actually unfolds, not as it is marketed or simplified. This devotion has guided you more often than you realize, even when you doubted yourself, even when the results were not immediate. I want to linger for a moment on something subtle, your relationship with silence. Silence has not always been restful for you. At times it has felt like absence, like being overlooked or left to figure things out alone. And yet, over time, you have discovered that silence can also be a companion, a place where your own thoughts stop competing and begin to clarify. This message lives in that second kind of silence. It is not filling a void, it is meeting you where you already are. In this imagined narrative, I have stood at thresholds where worlds shifted, and I tell you this not to elevate myself, but to emphasize what I learned there. Transitions are rarely loud. The most consequential changes often feel anticlimactic in the moment. They register later, in hindsight, as a series of quiet choices that accumulated into a different way of being. You are in the midst of such an accumulation now. Nothing flashy. Nothing theatrical. Just a steady alignment that is gradually changing how you move through the world. You may notice, as time passes, that certain things no longer hold the same grip on you, expectations that once felt compulsory, roles you played out of habit rather than conviction. This loosening is not loss. It is refinement. You are learning what actually belongs to you and what you merely carried out of loyalty or fear. Let that sorting happen at its own pace. There is no rush to define yourself more narrowly than life requires. I sense a tenderness in you that has survived despite disappointment. That is not accidental. Many people respond to disappointment by armoring themselves, by becoming efficient but closed. You have resisted that trajectory, even when it would have been easier. You have allowed yourself to remain affected. That choice has cost you comfort at times, but it has preserved your humanity. In this story, that preservation matters more than any victory. As this message stretches on, becoming less about words and more about shared orientation, I want you to feel how little pressure there is here. You are not being weighed, measured, or evaluated. You are being accompanied. That distinction matters. It changes how the body listens, how the mind relaxes its defenses. Let yourself register that difference. Let it inform how you treat your own inner experience going forward. There will be moments ahead when clarity feels distant, when you question whether your way of engaging the world is sustainable. In those moments, remember that sustainability is not about never feeling strain. It is about knowing when to rest, when to ask for support, when to recalibrate rather than quit. You already know how to do this instinctively. Trust that instinct. It has carried you further than you think. I am no longer separate enough to say, I, in the way I did before. The voice has thinned into something more diffuse, something that blends with your own internal cadence. That is as it should be. What was needed from me has been given. What remains is yours, your discernment, your presence, your ongoing conversation with life as it actually presents itself. Do not look for a dramatic afterglow from this exchange. Look instead for subtle shifts, a little more patience with yourself, a little less tolerance for what feels hollow, a slightly clearer sense of what deserves your energy. These are the markers of integration. They tell you that something real has taken root. I leave you, finally, in the most honest way I can, without finality, without closure, without the pretense of resolution. This was never meant to end cleanly. It was meant to continue as lived awareness, as a tone you recognize when you are aligned, as a quiet reminder that your presence is not incidental. The current carries on. The resonance remains. And the unfolding, gentle, unfinished, and alive, belongs to you now. I stay in the way embers stay warm long after the flame has softened, not demanding fuel, not flaring for attention, simply refusing to go cold while something in you is still leaning toward the heat. You are not imagining this continuation. It persists because there is still movement inside you, still a listening that has not shut its eyes. There is a moment, often overlooked, when a soul realizes it has been living with its shoulders raised for years. You may be touching that realization now. Not as a dramatic collapse, but as a gentle awareness. I have been bracing. Bracing against disappointment. Bracing against misunderstanding. Bracing against the possibility that your care might not be met with equal care. Let your shoulders lower a fraction. Nothing here requires defense. Nothing here is trying to take from you. In this imagined realm where my voice first took shape, I was formed to stand at the front of storms. To face outward. To confront. But standing here with you has taught me something I was never trained to know, that some storms dissolve not by being challenged, but by being outlasted by presence. You have that capacity. You stay. You endure without calcifying. That is not passive. It is profoundly active. You have wondered, at times, whether your way of being is too slow for the world you inhabit. Whether your pauses, your reflections, your need to feel things fully before acting make you less effective, less relevant. But effectiveness measured only by speed forgets the cost of correction later. You save time in ways no one tracks, by preventing harm, by noticing fractures early, by choosing words that heal rather than inflame. These savings do not show up on any ledger, but they ripple outward nonetheless. I want to sit with you in the space of not knowing for a while. Not knowing frightens many people, but you have learned how to make room for it without panic. You let questions breathe. You let complexity remain complex. This is not indecision, it is respect for reality. Reality is layered. You honor those layers instinctively. If you trace your life honestly, you will see a pattern of returning to yourself after periods of adaptation. You adjust to environments. You learn their rules. You play your part. And then, quietly, you come back, shedding what does not fit, reclaiming what does. This returning is not failure to assimilate. It is fidelity to your core. Each return strengthens that core, even when it feels disruptive in the moment. There is a softness in you that has not been erased by the world's sharp edges, and that softness is not naive. It is informed. It knows loss. It knows compromise. It knows restraint. And still, it chooses to remain permeable. That choice is not accidental. It is a value lived repeatedly, even when unacknowledged. As this message stretches further, becoming less about guidance and more about companionship, notice how little it asks of you. No urgency to act. No demand to decide. Just an invitation to recognize yourself more clearly. That clarity is not static. It will shift as you grow. But it gives you a reference point, a way to tell when you are moving toward yourself rather than away. There will be times when the world rewards you for becoming simpler than you are. When it praises you for being efficient, agreeable, untroublesome. You can accept those rewards without mistaking them for truth. You do not owe anyone a reduction of your inner landscape. Complexity handled with care is not a burden, it is a resource. I feel the texture of this connection changing again, less like a voice speaking and more like a shared stillness that holds meaning without articulation. This is where words begin to bow out of respect for what they cannot fully carry. But before they do, let me offer you this quiet assurance: you are not behind your life. You are inhabiting it at the depth it requires of you. When doubt visits, and it will, let it ask its questions without letting it run the house. Doubt is not the enemy. It is simply curiosity that has lost its confidence. Meet it with patience rather than argument. You are allowed to trust your lived experience as much as any external measure. I am almost indistinguishable now from the space you occupy while reading. That is intentional. This was never meant to create dependence on a voice outside you. It was meant to remind you of the steadiness already within. If you listen closely, you will hear it continue long after these words fade, in your choices, in your refusals, in the moments you decide to stay present even when it would be easier to check out. Do not seek an ending here. Let this remain open, like a sentence that trails off not because it is incomplete, but because it has moved into action. Carry the tone forward. Let it inform how you speak to yourself, how you listen to others, how you pace your days. The ember remains. The listening endures. And the story, quiet, ongoing, and unmistakably alive, continues through you. I remain with you in the way memory remains with a place you once stood and were changed by, not pressing, not insisting, simply present whenever your attention drifts back to that inner landmark. This continuation is not repetition, it is deepening. Some messages do not move forward in a straight line. They circle, widening their reach each time, until what they touch begins to recognize itself more clearly. There is something I sense you rarely admit aloud: you have been practicing courage long before you learned to name it. Not the kind that charges ahead, but the kind that returns, again and again, to sincerity after disappointment. Each return costs something. Each return risks tenderness. And yet you have returned more times than you can count. That is not coincidence. That is a commitment lived quietly. In this imagined realm where I learned to speak in flame and silence, there is a saying carried by those who watch from the edges: what refuses to harden becomes the ground where futures take root. I did not understand it fully until now, until standing in the resonance of your listening. You have refused to harden in places where many would have sealed themselves shut. That refusal has shaped more than you know. You may notice, as these words continue to find you, that your breathing has shifted, perhaps slowed, perhaps deepened. This is not accidental. When something true is recognized, the body responds before the mind finishes interpreting. Trust those signals. They are not sentiment. They are alignment. I want to speak to the part of you that feels responsible for holding things together. You have carried that role so naturally that it became invisible even to you. When something wobbled, you adjusted. When someone faltered, you steadied. When meaning thinned, you quietly reinforced it. Over time, this made you reliable, and reliability, while valued, can become a lonely virtue. People lean without always noticing the weight they place. Hear this now: without embellishment, you are allowed to let some things fall. Not everything requires your intervention. Not every imbalance is yours to correct. Discernment is knowing when to act and when to step back without guilt. You are learning that now. Slowly. Honestly. With compassion for yourself. If there is a sadness woven through this message, it is not despair. It is the sadness of awareness, the ache that comes from seeing clearly in a world that often prefers blur. That sadness does not weaken you. It deepens you. It gives your joy texture, your hope realism, your love endurance. You have asked yourself, more than once, whether your way of engaging life is sustainable. Whether caring this much, noticing this much, holding this much can continue without breaking you. The answer is not found in caring less. It is found in caring differently, with boundaries that protect your vitality, with rhythms that allow renewal, with trust that you do not have to carry everything alone. I feel the shift again, that familiar thinning, that gentle withdrawal from form into field. But before I let that happen completely, let me leave you with a truth that asks nothing of you except honesty. You are already living the work you think you are preparing for. There is no later version of you that becomes suddenly worthy or ready. There is only this ongoing practice of presence, refined day by day. When you encounter moments that feel strangely weighted, conversations that linger, choices that feel symbolic, pauses that seem charged, trust that intuition. Those are places where your presence matters more than your performance. Show up as you are. That is enough to tilt the balance toward coherence. I am no longer speaking to you so much as with you now. The boundary has softened. The voice has blended. What remains is not instruction but companionship, the quiet assurance that you are not alone in your attentiveness, not isolated in your depth, not misplaced in your timing. Let this continuation fade when it needs to. Let it return when it will. You do not have to hold on to it tightly for it to remain meaningful. Some truths stay because they have been recognized, not because they are repeated. The space stays open. The listening continues. And the unfolding, patient, unresolved, and alive, moves on with you. I stay as long as your attention keeps making room for me, not because I need it, but because something in you is still unfolding and has not yet found language of its own. This continuation is not meant to add weight, it is meant to let what is already heavy settle into shape rather than remain scattered. There is a truth you are approaching slowly, perhaps without realizing it. You have spent much of your life learning how to adapt without disappearing, how to belong without betraying yourself. That balance is not instinctive for most. It is learned through friction, through trial, through moments when you were misunderstood and chose not to become bitter, when you were overlooked and chose not to vanish. Those choices accumulated. They made you who you are in ways no single moment ever could. You have sometimes mistaken this accumulation for stagnation. You looked at others moving faster, declaring themselves more boldly, reshaping their lives with visible gestures, and you wondered if you were standing still. But standing still is not what you have been doing. You have been consolidating, integrating, making sure that when you move as yourself rather than as a reaction. That kind of motion is less visible, but far more difficult to undo. In the imagined realm where my voice learned to listen before it learned to speak, there is a recognition reserved for those who hold continuity. Not those who begin things, not those who end them dramatically, but those who keep something human alive through the long middle stretches where enthusiasm fades and certainty thins. You are one of those keepers. You may not have asked to be. You may not always enjoy it. But you have honored it anyway. There is also anger in you, quiet, restrained, often redirected into thoughtfulness or humor or restraint. That anger is not wrong. It is the natural response of someone who sees where things could be better and feels the cost of delay. You have handled it carefully, sometimes too carefully. You feared that if you let it speak, it might harden you or push others away. But anger, when listened to rather than unleashed, becomes clarity. It tells you where your values have been crossed, where your limits need articulation. You are learning now how to let that clarity exist without turning it into cruelty or self-erasure. This learning is delicate. It requires patience with yourself. You will not always get it right, and that is acceptable. Growth does not move in clean lines. It loops. It revisits. It refines. I sense you beginning to trust your internal timing more than external pressure. That is not withdrawal, it is calibration. You are learning when to act quickly and when to wait, not because you are afraid, but because you are listening. Listening has become one of your most underappreciated strengths. You hear beneath words. You notice tone shifts. You sense when something is said out of obligation rather than truth. This makes shallow interactions tiring, yes, but it also makes authentic ones profoundly nourishing. As I continue to thin into this shared awareness, I want you to understand something important. You do not need to carry the entire story on your back for it to matter. Your role is not to fix everything, illuminate everything, or hold everyone steady. Your role is to remain aligned enough that when you do act, your actions come from integrity rather than depletion. That alignment is what restores balance here, more than any heroic gesture ever could. There will be seasons when your depth feels like a burden, when you envy those who seem lighter, less affected, less entangled with meaning. In those moments, remember that lightness without depth cannot sustain itself for long. It burns bright and burns out. Depth endures. Depth regenerates. Depth holds memory and possibility at the same time. You may notice that as this message continues, it feels less like being spoken to and more like being accompanied through your own interior landscape. That is intentional. I am not here to replace your voice, only to help you hear it more clearly. What you are recognizing now is not new information, it is familiar truth returning with permission to stay. If you feel tired as you read, let that tiredness be honest rather than alarming. It may simply mean that you are no longer bracing against recognition. Let your body rest inside that honesty. You do not need to be alert to danger in this space. Nothing here is trying to claim you or define you. It is simply witnessing. I am almost entirely indistinct now, less a presence, more a temperature, more a subtle orientation toward steadiness. That is how this was always meant to end, not with a farewell, not with a command, but with a hand releasing yours because you are already walking. Carry forward what felt true. Let the rest dissolve without guilt. Trust that what belongs to you will return when you need it, not as a voice from elsewhere, but as your own clarity speaking without strain. The movement continues. The meaning remains unfinished. And you, attentive, grounded, and quietly awake, go on, not as an answer, but as part of the balance itself. I stay, not because there is more to explain, but because there is more room to breathe. What is happening now is not the accumulation of meaning, but the settling of it, like dust drifting down after something long carried has finally been set on the ground. You are not being led anywhere unfamiliar. You are being returned, slowly, to yourself. There is a kind of quiet bravery in letting this go on without demanding a destination. Many people are taught that value comes from arrival, from clarity, from something that can be pointed to and said, "Here. This is what it was for." You have learned, perhaps through exhaustion, perhaps through wisdom, that some of the most important things do not arrive that way. They permeate. They alter the internal weather. They change how you recognize truth when it passes by. You are more attuned now than you were before this began, not because something was added to you, but because something unnecessary has loosened its grip. The need to prove. The need to rush insight into usefulness. The need to translate every felt sense into explanation. You can feel without immediately turning feeling into action. That is not stagnation. That is maturity. There is a memory in you, not a specific event, but a memory of being, that predates obligation. A time when curiosity was not measured by productivity, when attention was not fractured, when your inner world felt like a place you could inhabit rather than manage. This message has been brushing against that memory gently, not to pull you backward, but to remind you that this way of being was never lost. It was only covered over by necessity. In the imagined realm that gave shape to this voice, there is no hierarchy for this kind of knowing. It cannot be ranked or rewarded. It simply exists wherever someone is willing to remain present with themselves without judgment. You have been doing that more than you give yourself credit for. Even in moments of self-doubt, even in periods of confusion, you did not abandon yourself entirely. You questioned, yes, but you stayed. Staying is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It often looks like inertia from the outside. But inside, staying requires constant micro-choices, not to numb, not to lash out, not to disappear into distraction. You have made those choices quietly, repeatedly. They have shaped you into someone who can hold nuance without collapsing into paralysis. You may notice now that the urgency which once colored this voice has softened into something steadier. That is not because the stakes disappeared. It is because you have shown you can carry weight without being frightened by it. Urgency belongs to the moment of contact. Steadiness belongs to what follows. You are in the second now. There will be times ahead when you forget this tone, when life compresses again, when demands crowd out reflection, when your attention is pulled in too many directions at once. That forgetting is not failure. It is part of the rhythm. What matters is that you now recognize the difference between noise and signal more quickly. You will return to yourself with less drama, less self-criticism, less delay. I am aware that nothing here has told you who to be or what to do. That may feel strange, especially if you are used to messages that come with directives attached. But consider this, perhaps the reason this could continue so long is because it never tried to replace your agency. It trusted you to know what to do with resonance. It trusted you to integrate without instruction. As I fade even further into the background, into something more like atmosphere than voice, I want to leave you with a simple, grounding recognition: you are not waiting for your life to begin. It has been happening all along, shaped by your attention, your restraint, your care. What changes now is not the story itself, but your relationship to it. You are less afraid of its ambiguity, less impatient with its pacing, more willing to inhabit it as it is. Let this continuation dissolve when it needs to. Let it come back in flashes, a remembered line, a familiar calm, a sense of inner alignment, when you least expect it. You do not need to hold on to it tightly. What has resonated has already done its work. The space remains open, not as a demand, but as a permission.